Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Gotta Get Running. I'm Phil Hargis, and alongside me, as usual, is Chris Farley. Chris, good to see you again.
Phil, how you doing, man?
Pretty good, man. Survived the Thanksgiving feast and everything. How did the turkey trot go for you?
It was great. You know, we had a number of turkey trots with Pacers, and that's the most run day of the year, so it went great and got through Black Friday, and looking forward to the holiday season.
Yeah, a lot of cool things going on for the holidays. It's, you never want to stop doing your running out there, and it's time to sort of start enjoying the cooler weather and some of the colder runs. But we like to do stuff here in the off running season, if you will, from the racing season maybe, and talk about other things. We did most recently a holiday special, but today we had some fun doing a book review last summer with Scott Jurek. Yep. So we brought in a couple of authors who are local here to talk about a book that they're working on. One of our favorite races around here, the Marine Corps Marathon, one that we've seen up close and personal many times.
That's right. Let's bring them in. It's Jeff Horowitz and Steve Neerman. Thanks, fellas, for joining us. How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Happy to be here. The book is called Marine Corps Marathon, An Epic Journey and Photographs. And we're having you guys here today to talk a little bit about it. So you guys are co-authors. Let's talk about the book. How did it come about?
Well, this is an idea that Steve originally had, but it had been percolating in my mind as well. Anybody I think who's done the race has thought how great it would be to have these memories encapsulated. But this is something that Steve and I first talked about. It was kicking around the back of his head, and we met a number of years ago, and he said, "Well, Jeff, I've got this idea of a book of photographs." Because it's there and it's waiting to be done. There are these archives of photos that the Marine Corps Marathon folks have down in Quantico, Virginia. And it took us a while to really wrap our minds around the idea of what we wanted to do and what we wanted to look like. And I think we were amazed by the shared vision that we had for it. As we kept talking, we realized that we both wanted the exact same thing for the book. We wanted to be a certain kind of thing that we'd be proud of.
And you guys are both. This isn't you're a writer. You're an author. You have a couple books, and Steve's been writing. He's been writing for 30 years here in D.C. So this wasn't new, but probably a different type of writing for both you guys, right?
Well, that's the irony of it. Steve has been writing about running for 30 years. For 30 years, and I've done a lot of writing books, but this is not a book about words.
Right.
This is a book about images. This is a book about the experience as you've seen it, as you've experienced it. If you've ever done the race, or you've been around the race, if you've been around marathoning or running, there'll be images that will speak to you, that will trigger your own memories, that will bring you back to what it was like to do that. And they say that an image is worth 100 words, 1,000 words. Yeah. So we decided to do it with the words and go more with the images.
So this was your idea, Steve. So you guys came together. You just saw Jeff or known Jeff, or how'd that come about?
Well, yeah, as Jeff said, I mean, I've been thinking about this for 20 years, covering the race, and thought that somebody needs to put this unbelievable event in pictures. And Jeff and I met, well, we had been running concentric circles around each other for years. It's not a large community when you talk about the running community and writers, and I've known about Jeff and his reputation, and he would pass by at expos and we would talk, and so he kept kind of busting on me the last couple of years. We got to do this book, man. We got to do this book, man. I'm like, all right, got to do this book. So at Cherry Blossom this year, he finally got to me, and then it came together. I said, okay, this is going to be the year that this book gets done. So,
well, it's going to be available in February, right? You can order it now, right? Is that correct?
It's available. Pre-order MCM book.
MCMphotobook.com.
And there's a discount code that was available at the race.
The expo.
At the expos. And you could order that now. It will ship in late February, early March.
So both you guys have done marathons. Your history of marathon running is long and lengthy. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, this is interesting because
it's about the rest of the 20 minutes.
Because we have two very different styles of running. Steve
Sane and insane.
Steve runs hard as possible for
800 meters. 2 minutes is about.
And it takes me about 2 hours to get going, till things are warmed up and rolling. The marathon speaks to me. I think the nice thing about running is that there's something in it, I believe, for everyone, that you could find your niche. And for me, it's a marathon. It's about the journey, as we say, an epic journey, as we say in the title. It's about the range of emotions that you feel during the race. And I felt that from the very first one, about the way you dedicate yourself to it, the way you every time you do it, you discover something new about your own capability and your own determination. And this year, I did the Marine Corps Marathon. It was my 166th marathon. But and there's a medal we have right here from those of you who haven't seen it, haven't done the race. You know how popular spinners are now, so it spins. This is this year's medal, but when I first did it, this goes back some years now, it's a long time. Well, 1987, and the Marine Corps Marathon is special to me because it was my very first marathon. And of course you think, well, that was going to be my one and only.
Right.
And they gave you this little
That thing
trophy.
Look at that. Can you get
Yeah.
a zoom
That's
in
the
on
size
that?
of
That is
Right,
half your
unbelievable.
finger.
You wouldn't attract people to run this race with that medal.
Look at this.
How it's changed. But I have to tell you that, and to date, despite all the medals I've gotten, and it's amazing in running how medals have become such a big thing. I remember meeting a representative from the Dublin Marathon, and they used to just give these strange plaques. I don't know if you saw them.
Yeah.
And finally, so they had medals on display at one of the tables. What's with the medals? Oh, you Americans with the medals. So there is no medal, despite all the different medals I've had, that I'm prouder of than this one.
yeah.
I mean, your first event, it speaks to you, and it captured me, and it's changed so much over the years. Steve has covered it now 30 years. You've seen all the changes. You've covered all but one of the years. during that
Well,
time.
from '82 until the present, I missed 2004.
So you covered it for the Post and the Times, right?
Correct. So the
Okay.
Post in the '80s and the Times from 1991 until, well, I mean, all the way up to this current year race. So I missed 2004 because I had to go to the Himalayas and cover a 100-mile stage race.
Right.
And you asked me earlier before the show if I regretted not doing Marine Corps. It broke a streak, which was kind of disappointing.
Right.
But I wouldn't trade that experience to go run in the Himalayas.
Well, the images, and look at these two guys here. I mean, there is nothing that paints the picture better than the images. And you got an '88 shirt, and you got the 2012 shirt. That's
right.
So
The old
it's great that
vintage
you can
shirt.
still fit in this shirt. That's what running does for you. You can really continue to fit in your clothes if you keep running.
Right.
But yeah, it's really cool to see some of the pictures and just you guys sitting here
Well, I tell you, I
from
wish
the
my-
past and compare them to the now.
I was gonna say my wife probably wishes I would update my clothing a little bit. She probably wouldn't mind if I
25-year-old,
didn't fit in
24-year-old
all the old
man.
shirts.
Yeah.
Well, you get committed to it, and it brings back memories. And that's one of the things that we want to do with our book. The feeling I get when I look at the medal, when I look at the shirt, is not just what these things are, but what they represent. And you get the whole flood of memories back. And so what we've gotten in the book is all these images, not just of elite runners, so they are there, but just of the different moments. And many of them are discrete moments that each one tells a story itself, or moments that will trigger memories in the people who've done that. And they'll remember their own experiences at that particular spot. And it's really a journey to go through. It's been a journey, I think, to just get these photos.
Well, yeah, I had brown hair when we started. If it means anything to you. But the cool thing about the book, too, is it's a coffee table photo book. So it's virtually an 11 by 11, which is a large book that will sit on your table with very vivid pictures that jump out. And we want people to buy the book and be proud, if you've run the race before, to show your friends, have them flip through and have them feel what you felt going through the race. And if you haven't run it before, have it be an inspiration toward working up to the marathon distance.
And that is pretty cool because a lot of time when you do run these marathons, you end up with the pictures you can buy of yourself online, but you never ever have a chance to show your friends and family the other things that you see along your 26.2 mile journey.
And I'm glad you said that because I always hate those photos of me because I don't know if you've ever. They're the worst photos.
So is your wife. She says you need a new shirt.
I need a new shirt. But distance running is kind of a funny thing. It doesn't have that photographic allure sometimes of like sprinters, right? It all looks like this great action. A typical distance runner might have his foot planted directly below his body.
Both feet.
Yeah.
Which is humanly impossible, but they do it. I don't know how.
And so many of them don't really speak to you much. It's a shot maybe of you crossing a finish line, which is great, and people love that. But in terms of your experience, it doesn't capture the rest of it. So we've been avoiding those kind of typical photos and opting for ones that are just so much more interesting. My favorite chapter, this is, we have different theme chapters. So this is not going to be a book that follows a race chronologically.
Let's talk about the layout of the book. How have you guys set that up? Is that something you want to go and get into right now?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
start
absolutely.
with,
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
What they
So,
when they buy this.
So, the backdrop here is probably going to be our cover. really kind of exudes what the race is all about. So you don't have to really explain it when it's sitting there, which is good. But then we're going to have about a dozen different chapters going with, and we don't call them elite, we call them notable personalities like Oprah and Al Gore and John Edwards and the Supreme Court Justice
Clarence Thomas.
Thomas.
He ran fast. He ran like 3:15. Yeah,
3:11 he ran.
Okay,
3:11, and
awesome.
Drew Carey from last year.
Mike Huckabee ran in it.
Mike Huckabee,
right.
and I got a great Mike Huckabee story. So get back to me on this one, and even Glenn Brenner. We forget about Glenn Brenner. He ran this race back.
Sportscaster
So a
from
long-time
DC.
Washingtonian
Sportscaster.
will remember.
Dorian.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So so that would be one chapter, and Jeff's favorite chapter, and he harps on this whenever we're looking at pictures. He loves the carnage. So when I hear him giggling next to me, I know he's found a good carnage picture of somebody.
Give me someone flat out on the back on the floor. There's one shot we just found, and I think he's stretching, but I kind of.
Well, the Marine
I'm
is
not sure.
stretching him
But he's
at
doing,
a water stop.
Actually, this is a spot. He's just alone by himself on the road, and I
this
think
is
he's
another one.
working on his hip. But it looks like he's just collapsed face down on the floor. And yeah, I love those shots because I think even if we haven't found ourselves in these positions, we've all felt that.
You can relate.
But it's the emotional outpouring. People don't like watching events where there isn't any emotional content. There was a story I remember during the Tour de France years with Lance, how the French didn't like him because it didn't look like he was suffering. Until one year he crashed and he suffered, and then
they could relate, yeah.
Suffering speaks.
Right,
You know,
right.
and whether you're suffering inside or suffering outwardly, it's there. But when it's outward, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, so he's the carnage guy. So
the
he's
carnage guy.
vice president of carnage. Who we put the carnage pictures through him. We'll have a small section on 9/11 as a tribute, which there were some great pictures out of that race. We also have Marines at work, so Marines handing out water, Marines setting up, Marines running, Marines at the medical tent. We're going to have a pageantry section of people carrying the flags, because there's always somebody's carrying the American flag or the POW MIA flag. So that will be in there. Pictures along the course, pictures that anybody who's run this race would say, these have to be in the book. The picture coming across the Key Bridge with Georgetown and the condos up there, and now we have a picture of them coming through Spout Run. We have pictures coming up through Arlington, through the skyscrapers, and pictures going around the Capitol and Lincoln Memorial. So course will be important. So those are kind of some of the sections that we've been working on at this point. If you want to add some of the others.
And what's nice about it's not just these stages of the race, but there's also time, which is the unspoken character in the whole book, because the race is 37 years old. And over that time, so much has changed in running, so much has changed in the race itself, in the
in
course.
people in general.
In people in general. And that will all be captured. One of the things I really like about what we're able to do with this book is that since we're not tethered to a chronological approach, we can juxtapose images and really get a sense of how things have changed. So we talked earlier about like the Expo. This is a race without an expo. When I got this shirt, you would show up in the hotel and in the room set aside for it and get your shirt and get your number. And now, of course, it's become a world-class, huge expo event. And comparing those images, comparing what the start line looks like, the one that's behind us now, versus the way it was, when I first began, which had a field of less than half of these numbers.
Yeah, I mean, it started in '76 and had a field of 1,100 finishers. Yeah, and so the changes, and my dad ran it, in the early '80s, and he signed up the day before the race. So it's a lot different on so many levels.
Chris, we could hardly get into your races now the day before the race.
We have to use your name to get in sometimes.
I know,
and sometimes that doesn't even work.
No, but it has changed a lot, and I'm sure the pictures just, tell 1,000 words. How did you guys find all these pictures? Who's taking these pictures? Where are you finding them?
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah, so the Marines at Quantico, they have a huge, they have these big books. And from 2011 and back for a while, we have discs because it's digital. But they also have archives with the early pictures from the PAO office. And remember, initially this was the Marine Corps Reserve Marathon, and it was staged out of the Marine Corps Reserves, and it took a while. You want to talk about passage of time now at Quantico, they actually have a huge building for the Marine Corps Marathon office where they staff 30 people.
Right.
And in the early days, it was just out of an office
Right.
in D.C. So
30 people who are just on the race and other events that Marine Corps puts on, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. That's all they do.
Huge
They're,
change.
they're not
Right.
any other
Right.
function in the Marines
Right.
than putting on Marine Corps Marathon events. So that's been a big change too. So we have photographs. Typically, the Marines have sent out about a half a dozen photographers. And it's interesting because we're beginning to see who's better and who isn't. 'Cause we see the disc and we go, oh, this is going to be a good one. We see this disc, maybe not so
Right.
good. Some just have a knack for getting the shots that we're looking for. So we're using that. A friend of ours has shot for the military for many, many years, and he's going to open up he's copying onto disc right now all of his photos from being on the press truck and covering the race. And we're reaching out to the general public. So, if anybody who sees this video, Steve at mcmphotobook.com, send us your photos. If we choose your photo, we'll put you in the book and we'll give you a photo credit.
Yeah, so if you've got a photo out there, Steve at mcmphoto.com.
Photo book.
Photo book. Steve at mcmphotobook.com. I think it's a great, I'm sure there's people out there watching who've got amazing images from the race.
Right.
Absolutely.
And what's interesting about it, Steve mentioned about how we go down to the building, and you go into this one office, and ringing the walls are just these framed shirts going from the very beginning. So you get the feel for it. They have different maps there, and you're enmeshed immediately in the whole history of the Marine Corps. And then they bring out these books for us, these massive, massive books.
Really?
And it's literally looking for the needle in the haystack, but they're there. And like Steve mentioned, you get a sense of some of the photographers would take the very standard photos, what they expect you to take and what people are expecting. And that's fine as far as that goes. And then you get people who just try and do something a little bit different, a little bit more. Before the show began, before we started filming this, we showed you, Chris, a photo that someone had taken, had gone up in Georgetown into one of the apartments overlooking the course up on the second floor, and took a shot over the back of two people watching the race as the runners are streaming by down the street.
Through the window, and it's a great perspective.
And all credit to the photographer who thought that would be a great shot, because it turns out it was. And we start becoming familiar with the names of those photographers, and you know that you're going to get in something special when you get to one of those books with some of those photographers who are getting known to Steve and I, and we could find those needles from the haystack and put them right in our book.
And there are guys that just like to go out and photograph these races just as a hobby, like the local guys that go out and take pictures.
Absolutely.
It's a great day. It's a colorful day to be out there.
Yeah.
Since this race has been going on since 1976, we haven't always had computers and JPEG pictures. You're probably getting a lot of hard copy, like Polaroids and pictures. And, that sounds like it's a lot more work. Are you guys doing that yourselves, or do you have?
We have a designer who's going
to
to take some of those photos and help us kind of whatever they do to make them look good and recreate them. I don't know how, but some of the early photos are going to need some work. But old photos that look old also bring an interesting look, like antique photos. They
nice,
bring
authentic.
They show the time.
And you know how many total photos will be in this book?
We're looking at about 180 photos over 150 pages.
Wow.
So weeding through a lot of photos, but it's really been a labor of love. I think Steve and I agreed when we began this that the most important thing was that this was something that you don't get too many chances of doing. That we're honoring a lot of people who put a lot of work into this, a lot of people in the armed forces who either participate themselves or through their support have really given of themselves to make this what it is. And this was our shot to try and honor that whole experience and that history. And so our vision was to make something that we would be proud of, that we would want to have in our homes, and we were hoping that other people would be proud to have. So going through thousands and thousands of photos for just the right ones, reproduced in just the right way to give you that feel. Because more than having a particular phrase or history in the book is the feeling you get coming away from it. That my hope is that when you close the book, you're just filled with that sense of the experience, and that this was a race that meant a lot to a lot of people over the years, and that book should reflect that.
And one of the really cool things is there are some photos there that don't have Rick Nealis in them.
Those are hard to find.
And we're going to put a little bit. Rick, if you're watching, we're going to put a little book together called Rick Being Rick, because there are some awesome Rick Nealis photos, and you know he is one of the personalities of the race. He makes the race.
How has he been receptive to this idea?
We have actually a license agreement with the Marine Corps, so we can use the logo, and they are totally supportive. They put us in their book this year, in the competitor book, a little ad for us. They will be emailing out competitors, telling them about the book. So the Marines are stoked about this. They really are looking forward to us producing a collector's item that they can go out and market with, and they can give to you know, like generals and people who are retiring and be really proud. So
yeah, so Rick Nealis is he's the race director of the Marine Corps Marathon. He's been race director for a while.
Chris Farley of the Marine Corps Marathon.
And so the fact that he's endorsing it is fantastic. Yeah, so these guys, I mean, Jeff and Steve are local DC. I mean, you guys have been DC running forever. 30 plus years.
Thanks,
so,
young guy.
Feels that way.
which is great. So where are we going to see this book? I mean, we'd love to have it at Pacers. I mean, what else are we looking? How are we going to distribute it?
We would love to have that because you know the thing about being a runner in DC, that it's a community, and you see the same faces at the races, and you know Steve and I, you know, came together through our participation in the community, and so supporting the community is very important to us. So to be connected with Pacers, to be able to have the book there is very important. And being with the race. This is about the Marine Corps Marathon. It's in partnership with the Marine Corps Marathon, and it'll be at the Marine Corps Marathon. So we'll be at their expos. It's available online. So basically, we're bringing the book to the people who really love the Marine Corps Marathon the most, who love running in the DC community the most, and going to the places where we expect to find them.
And you guys are self-publishing this, which is fascinating to me. 26.2. What's your publishing company?
26.2 publishing.
26.2
Expect big things coming down.
Yeah.
This. You know, there are a lot of races out there that deserve to be honored the same way.
Well, this was going to be your first and only marathon, so maybe this isn't the only project for 26.2.
This is true.
I think he's onto something.
Yeah. So how was that process? I mean, that's fascinating to me. Has it been difficult to self-publish, or did you look at other options?
Yeah, it was the only option for me.
Really?
I was not going to trust this book with anybody else. And the whole idea of having a publisher is to take the financial risk, and the financial risk is that you print up 5,000 books and nobody buys them.
Right.
But we know where the runners are. The marketing plan is actually pretty simple. It's expos, it's an online presence, and it's being in running shops, specialty running shops like your Pacers, and you know, with all of your locations, and doing book signings, that's what a publisher would take on, and we don't need a publisher to do that. So what we do is we divide it up into the various parts. So we went to look for a great printing company, and that's sort of where we started, with the printing company. And we found a printing company up in Hagerstown that prints some of the best publishers around, and this place is huge, and they were just really excited to work with us, and they loved the idea, and they put us in touch with a designer because we needed a designer. We are words guys. We know how to type words into system. I don't know how to crop a photo.
I mean, we had an idea here, you know, and the idea was about this vision for the book, and you had to have a feel for it, and we were lucky enough to get a designer who I think, even though he didn't start out a runner, but he's turning into one, he tells us.
He's going to run a marathon.
He's
going to run a half marathon.
He's inspired. He told us the races he's going to do now. But he understood that vision, you know, that it should look a certain way, and you should come away again with a feeling for that experience. But getting the designer, and I love the name of this. This was all new to me from this end. A fulfillment company. I just love that name because it could be almost anything, you know. It's like makes dreams come true. But the company that will stock the book, send out shipments, you know, do all the stuff that happens when you hit the button, you know, purchase. So putting all those pieces together.
And they were a local company. ASAP Printing was on Eisenhower Avenue for the longest time in Alexandria, and now they've moved out to Dulles. And they've been great there, helping us set up the e-store online and the whole fulfillment process. So, you know, we broke this down into bite-sized parts, and we've connected all the dots, and so we have a system in place. And like you said, it lends itself for future endeavors.
And I think one of the cornerstones of it, and this is, I imagine, your approach with Pacers, that this had to be a product that I would want to buy. Right, and I thought if as a runner, as a Marine Corps Marathon participant, you know, many times over, if this didn't speak to me, if this wasn't something that I wanted to get, then I didn't think anybody else would. So before we worried about anybody else's, you know, vision or whatever anybody else might want, this had to cross that bar.
meet with you guys.
Absolutely.
And I think basically anybody that's run the Marine Corps Marathon or any marathon for that matter is going to walk into a Pacers or any retail expo and see this book and instantly want to buy it. So that's going to be totally awesome. I think you're going to totally hit on that. Real quick, you guys, we're getting ready to wrap things up here. I got to ask both of you, like, what is the one most defining like Marine Corps Marathon moment that sticks out in your minds?
Oh gosh.
Wow.
Is it a story that or a story of somebody else?
Oh, I don't have any
weather-wise or
stories
one particular
myself.
race
Well,
or-
I do have a story. I got arrested at the Marine Corps Marathon once. That's
Pictures of
another.
that.
No, it was
That was
trying
a
to
long
cover
rap
Al
sheet
Gore,
there.
and an MP arrested
Yeah.
me for jumping a snow fence, and
Right.
so it was pretty wild. He was acting very indignant toward me, and I was like, kept flipping him the press pass, and he said, "Your day is over here," and I said, "Well, that's great. Well, let me get your name so I can write in the article that I didn't cover the race because of private so-and-so." And he said, "Well, I'll fix you." And so he went to fix me. He took me to Rick Nealis, and Rick Nealis said, "What are you doing? He's a journalist. This is crazy." And
Freedom of the press. Right?
yeah, so that was
That's a great story.
Yeah, there was, and everybody
You should
does
write
have
a
a
book.
story.
And what about some of your other arrests? I'm just kidding.
yeah, there are some.
Any other pictures that you guys can think of specifically that tell a story about the race or?
Oh, there's so many. Well, there was one I was mentioning earlier because what I love about some of the photos we get is that you can instantly imagine the entire story that lays out behind it. And for me, one of my personal moments is just crossing the finish line.
Yeah.
And as with any race, that's such a special moment. In the Marine Corps Marathon, anyone who's done it knows it's especially poignant because a Marine is there to give you the medal.
Yeah.
And so there's one photo we have that we found that I love. It's of a young man, and he's got a black running kit on, and he's come across the finish line, and he's dropped down to all fours, and he's kissing the ground. And inverted on the back of his shirt, you can read that he dedicated it to his father.
That's awesome.
And in the midst of all the craziness going on at the finish line, of all the other runners coming through, and the Marines there helping them, there's this very private, personal moment. And you can just imagine what the backstory might be for him, and just to see that and feel that and know why he took that whole journey, that's what spoke to me.
And there's so many journeys like that.
Yeah.
With every runner
Everybody
every
does.
year for the history of the 37-year running of the Marine Corps Marathon. So it's gonna be quite a task you guys have. I know it's gonna be great. I mean, there's just so much photographic evidence out there that you guys are gonna be going through. It's a
180
fun job.
That's
It
great.
sounds like it's gonna be a blast.
We've had a great time.
So far,
It's been a lot.
So you guys,
forward
this
to
is
it.
the Marine Corps Marathon, an epic journey in photographs, and it's gonna be available in February 2013.
Pre-order Marine Corps Marathon photo book, mcmphotobook.com.
And if you want your picture at $5,000, check. We'll put your picture right in there.
He's sort of kidding.
Sort of. Well, not really. We got to pay for the book somehow.
We can get a commission on that too.
All right, it's coming
you've
your
got
way.
it.
All right, well, listen, Jeff, Steve, thanks for joining us on the show. For
Thank
Chris
you.
Farley, I'm Phil Hargis, and again, that's the Marine Corps Marathon Epic Journey in Photographs. Get it at mcmphotobook.com, and we'll see you guys next time on Gotta Get Running. Bye-bye, everybody.